So let's talk about prioritizing work. Specifically, how do Agile teams handle the prioritization of work, right? So the first concept here to keep in mind is the idea that with Agile teams or in Agile in general, what we're trying to do is instead of parallelizing the work, so imagine working on multiple things in parallel at the same time, what Agile teams are trying to do is sequence the work. Therefore, we talk about prioritization all the time, right? Sequence the work, figure out what's the most important thing to do, and then work on that as quickly as possible to finish it as quickly as possible, and then move on to the second item. So the first concept is this idea of sequencing the work, not parallelizing the work. So that's the idea when you hear about a product backlog. What is a product backlog? It's essentially a list of the work we have to do, right? So all these items in the product backlog are items that deliver value and are items that we're going to sequence, to prioritize, right? So to make clear to the teams that are working on this, what's number one, what's number two, what's number three. Now you could, of course, just visualize the backlog like this. So imagine, for example, an Excel sheet. Each row on the Excel sheet is an item that delivers value, and you're just going to have a column that says priority, and you sort by that column, and you have your backlog over there, right? However, in some contexts, imagine a team, a support team that might be working on multiple projects at the same time, or a product team that has to focus on an entire customer journey. It's a little bit difficult sometimes to visualize the product backlog with just one set of priorities in a single list like that, right? We need a little bit more context. So the second thing I would recommend here is try to visualize the product backlog, maybe using something like a user story mapping. So when we visualize a backlog, for example, using a user story map, what's happening there? We're keeping this axis here of priority, right? So the things at the top are the most important things to do, and the things at the bottom are the least important things to do. But we're adding another axis, right? Another dimension of context. So for example, if you're a team working on multiple projects, maybe each one of these columns is each project, so you can first think about all the work you have to do for this project, and then think about the sequence you're going to do the work across all the projects. Or if you're a product team, this could be your entire customer journey, for example, right? So the different steps in the customer journey, and you're thinking about the different features you have to build to support that customer journey. But you still don't lose the idea of priority, right? So if you imagine a line over here that's going down, that line's going to touch one item first, then another item, then another item, right? I'm just improving how I visualize my product backlog, so it's easier for people to understand everything that's there, but I'm still keeping that idea of sequencing the work, not parallelizing the work. The next thing you need to do here is to prioritize the backlog, right? So you're first going to be capturing a lot of ideas or these items or the things you need to do. You're putting everything into one list, right? This is a key concept for an Agile team. We want one list where work flows through the team through that backlog. So there's first this exercise of capturing all these ideas or all the things we have to do. The second part of the exercise, of course, is prioritizing that work. So I'll quickly introduce two prioritization techniques that you can already try to use with your team to prioritize that backlog, right? So one would be a prioritization technique called cost of delay, which focus more on understanding the value that specific items are going to deliver, right? So if you imagine these boxes over here, imagine that the height of the box represents how much value that's going to bring for the organization, right? So it's going to generate a lot of new revenue, or it's going to generate savings, or it's going to have some value for the organization, right? So the height of the item is how much value it delivers. The width of the item is the duration, right? How long it takes us to pull this off, right? So maybe this is a small change that doesn't take a lot of time, or maybe this is a big change and it's going to take a lot of work, so it's going to take a lot of time, right? So value is the height, and the width is the duration of the project or the idea that we have. So the idea, of course, here is you're going to take for each of the ideas you have, the things in your product backlog, you're going to estimate the value they're going to deliver, and you're going to estimate their duration, and then you divide value by duration. That gives you a factor, you prioritize by that factor. So if you take a look at these three rectangles here, which one would we do first, of course? Well, this one here brings in a lot of value and is very short to do, right? It's not going to take a lot of time, and everybody's going to benefit from it. Which one are we going to do second? Well, this one here brings in more value than this one and takes less time. And this one here, of course, will be the third one that we do, or maybe we wouldn't even do it because it takes a lot of time and doesn't bring in a lot of value. Okay. So how does this look like if you prioritize using cost of delay? Something like this. So what you see here is, on this axis we have time, and first I would implement the most valuable projects, then the square, and then the long rectangle, right? And this curve here is my cost of delay. It's how much money we lost because it took us time to put these things in the market or put those ideas in place, right? If you imagine if we had done the opposite, if we had first worked on the long rectangle, then the square, and then this one last, then this green area would be much bigger. Why? Because we had a much larger opportunity cost, right? By prioritizing this way, we did it the best way possible and really earned as much as we could, or generated as much value as we could. There is a second option, which is not using the value and duration of the item, but taking the customer perspective, right? So you talk to the customer and try to understand what they want the most. So this other technique is called Kano, and the idea is, on the vertical axis we have how happy are the customers or your users with the value you're delivering, with this piece of value, right? So you would ask them two questions basically. Hey, how do you feel if this feature or this process or this change is present? How do you feel if this is not present, right? And what happens is you can map those responses and understand what kind of features they are. Because the first kind of feature you can have are features that if they're not present, and that's the left side of the graph, people are unhappy. If they are present though, and that's the right side of the graph, they don't really care. It doesn't move the needle for them. Then the other type of items that we have could map, if they are not present, they are unhappy, and if they're present, they're happy. So let's quickly think about these two already. If you imagine the red items over here, not present, I'm unhappy, present, I'm indifferent, these are kind of like your must-haves, right? I need to have those things there, because if I don't, people are going to be actively unhappy. The green ones are the second priority, right? If they're present, people are going to be unhappy. If they're not present, people are going to be unhappy. If they're present, people are going to be really, really happy, right? The other type of ideas that are not present and I'm indifferent, I don't really care. But if they are present, I'm super excited about them. And of course, these would be priority number 3. I would do these ideas or these items after I do the must-haves and I do the performers. Then I would worry about the lighters, the things that come last, right? And the interesting thing, if you prioritize like this, is it allows you to understand what your customers or users expect to be present. And you're prioritizing the backlog not from a value perspective, but from a customer perspective. And the fourth key step here in prioritizing work is the idea of refinement, right? So what do Agile teams do? They understand that the priorities of today are not necessarily going to be the priorities of tomorrow. Why? Because things change, because we're learning new things, we're delivering items, we're getting feedback. Some things that we thought were going to work are not working. Some things we thought people are going to like, they're not liking. So things are always changing. How does an Agile team deal with this? They don't try to freeze things or be unwelcoming to change. On the contrary, we want to know if things are not going well so that we can readapt or readjust the priorities. And when are we going to do this? During this activity of refinement. So if we have a transparent product backlog, we're going to get together frequently, so let's say once every 1 or 2 weeks, to take a look at that backlog and see, are there new things we need to add? Are the priorities still correct? Does something need to change? So this idea of continuous or frequent backlog refinement is very important to be able to continuously prioritize the work coming in for the team. So there you have it. Prioritizing the work as an Agile team. What are you going to do? The basic concept is we want to sequence the work, right? Stop trying to parallelize everything, try to sequence things more, because this is going to help us be more efficient, more productive, get things done faster. And if we can get things done faster, we can learn quicker if those things are working or not, if people like it, if they're generating the desired impact, right? Second step, visualize that backlog, make it easy to work with. Add that second dimension of the context, so that you can categorize different types of work. This is going to make that backlog easier to manage. Third thing is, make sure you prioritize that backlog very well. Pick a method that works for you. Understand for your context how the prioritization should work, but you should make sure that your team is working on the most important thing, because if not, you're getting a low return on investment and you're missing an opportunity and your cost of delay is going to be much bigger, right? And fourth, keep in mind your backlog is never going to be perfect. Things are changing, new ideas are coming up, so you need to meet frequently to refine it and adjust the priorities there.